Machu Picchu is a 15th-century Inca citadel, positioned inside the eastern cordillera of southern Peru, on a 2,430-meter (7,970 feet) mountain ridge. It is positioned inside the Machu Picchu district inside Urubamba province above the Sacred Valley that is 80 kilometers (50 miles) northwest of Cuzco. The Urubamba River flows beyond it, slicing via the cordillera, and growing a canyon with a tropical mountain climate. Most archaeologists accept as true that Machu Picchu became built as an property for the Inca Emperor Pachacuti, 1438–1472. Often mistakenly known as the Lost City of the Incas, it's far the maximum acquainted icon of Inca civilization. The Incas constructed the property round 1450, however deserted it a century later on the time of the Spanish conquest. Although regarded locally, it became now no longer regarded to the Spanish at some point of the colonial length, and remained unknown to the out-of-doors international till American historian Hiram Bingham added it to global interest in 1911. Machu Picchu became constructed inside the classical Inca style, with polished drystone walls. Its three number 1 systems are the Intihuatana, the Temple of the Sun, and the Room of the Three Windows. Most of the outlying homes were reconstructed so as to supply travelers a higher concept of ways they in the beginning appeared. By 1976, 30% of Machu Picchu have been restored and healing continues. Machu Picchu became declared a Peruvian historic sanctuary in 1981 and a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1983. In 2007, Machu Picchu became voted one of the new 7 wonders of the world in a global net poll. History. Machu Picchu is believed, with the aid of using Richard L. Berger, to be constructed beginning 1450–1460. Construction seems so far from superb Inca rulers, Pachacutec Inca Yupanqui, 1438–1471, and Tupac Inca Yupanqui, 1472–1493. It is feasible that maximum of its population died from smallpox, added with the aid of using tourists earlier than the Spanish conquistadors arrived inside the area. Daily lifestyles in Machu Picchu. Though the estate belonged to Pachacutec, religious specialists and temporary specialized workers, Maocs, lived there as well, most likely for the ruler's well-being and enjoyment. Studies show that according to their skeletal remains, most people who lived there were immigrants from diverse backgrounds. They lacked the chemical markers and osteological markers they would have if they had been living there their whole lives. Instead, there was bone damage from various species of water parasites indigenous to different areas of Peru. There were also varying osteological stressors and varying chemical densities suggesting varying long-term diets characteristic of specific regions that were spaced apart. These diets are composed of varying levels of maize, potatoes, grains, legumes, and fish, but the overall most recent short-term diet for these people was composed of less fish and more corn. This suggests that several of the immigrants were from more coastal areas and moved to Machu Picchu where corn was a larger portion of food intake. Most skeletal remains found at the site had lower levels of arthritis and bone fractures than those found in most sites of the Inca Empire. Inca individuals who had arthritis and bone fractures were typically those who performed heavy physical labor, such as the MITA, or served in the Inca military. Llama with Machu Picchu ruins in the background. Animals are also suspected to have migrated to Machu Picchu, as there were several bones found that were not native to the area. Most animal bones found were from llamas and alpacas. These animals naturally live at altitudes of 4,000 meters, 13,000 feet, rather than the 2,400 meters, 7,900 feet, elevation of Machu Picchu. Most likely, these animals were brought in from the Puna region for meat consumption, and for their pelts. Guinea pigs were also found at the site in special burial caves, suggesting that they were at least used for funerary rituals, as it was common throughout the Inca Empire to use them for sacrifices and meat. 6 dogs were also recovered from the site. Due to their placements among the human remains, it is believed that they served as companions of the dead. Agriculture. Terraces used for farming at Machu Picchu. Much of the farming performed at Machu Picchu become performed on its masses of synthetic terraces. These terraces had been a piece of full-size engineering, constructed to make certain precise drainage and soil fertility at the same time as additionally defensive the mountain itself from erosion and landslides. However, the terraces had been now no longer perfect, as research of the land displayed that there had been landslides that befell throughout the development of Machu Picchu. Still seen are locations in which the terraces had been shifted with the aid of using landslides, after which stabilized with the aid of using the Inca, as they persevered to construct across the location. It is expected that the location across the web page has obtained greater than 1,800 millimeters, 71 in, of rain consistent with 12 months, because AD 1450, which become greater. Then had to aid crop increase there, because of the massive quantity of rainfall at Machu Picchu, it become located that irrigation become now no longer wished for the terraces. The terraces obtained a lot rain that they had been constructed with the aid of using Incan engineers mainly to permit for adequate drainage of the more water. Excavation and soil analyses performed with the aid of using Kenneth Wright with inside the 90s confirmed that the terraces had been constructed in layers, with a backside layer of large stones protected with the aid of using unfastened gravel. On pinnacle of the gravel become a layer of blended sand and gravel packed together, with wealthy topsoil masking all of that. It become proven that the topsoil become in all likelihood moved from the valley ground to the terraces, as it become an awful lot higher than the soil better up the mountain. Encounters. In 1911, American historian and explorer Hiram Bingham traveled the location seeking out the vintage Inca capital, and became brought about Machu Picchu through a villager, Melchor Artiega. Bingham located the call Agustin Lizarraga, and the date 1902 written in charcoal on one of the walls. Though Bingham became now no longer the primary to go to the ruins, he became taken into consideration the medical discoverer, who added Machu Picchu to global attention. Bingham prepared every other excursion in 1912 to adopt main clearing and excavation. In 1981, Peru declared a place of 325.92 rectangular kilometers, 125.84 sq surrounding Machu Picchu a anciental sanctuary. In addition to the ruins, the sanctuary consists of a massive part of the adjacent location, wealthy with the vegetation and fauna of the Peruvian Yungas and Central Andean moist Puna ecoregions. In 1983, UNESCO distinct Machu Picchu a World Heritage Site, describing it as an absolute masterpiece of structure and a completely unique testimony to the Inca civilization. First American excursion. Melchor Artiega crossing the Urubamba River on July 24, 1911. Sergeant Carrasco at Machu Picchu on July 24, 1911. Bingham changed into a lecturer at Yale University, despite the fact that now no longer a skilled archaeologist. In 1909, coming back from the Pan American Scientific Congress in Santiago, he traveled via Peru and changed into invited to discover the Inca ruins at Choqquequirau with inside the Apurimac Valley. He prepared the 1911 Yale Peruvian expedition in component to look for the Inca capital, which changed into notion to be the metropolis of Vitcos. He consulted Carlos Romero, one of the leader historians in Lima, who confirmed him useful references, and Father Antonio de Los Angeles Calenca's Chronicle of the Augustinians. In particular, Ramos' notion Vitcos changed into close to a notable white rock over a spring of sparkling water. 1964 Jean Savoy further explored the ruins at Espiritu Pampa, and revealed the full extent of the site, identifying it as Vilcabamba Viejo, where the Incas fled after the Spanish drove them from Vitcos. Bingham returned to Machu Picchu in 1912 under the sponsorship of Yale University and National Geographic again, and with the full support of Peruvian President Leguía. The expedition undertook a 4-month clearing of the site with local labor, which was expedited with the support of the prefect of Cuzco. Excavation started in 1912, with further excavation undertaken in 1914 and 1915. Bingham focused on Machu Picchu because of its fine Inca stonework and well-preserved nature, which had lain undisturbed since the site was abandoned. During his studies, he carried various artifacts back to Yale. One prominent artifact was a set of 15th-century ceremonial Incan knives made from bismuth bronze. They are the earliest known artifact containing this alloy. Geography. Map of Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu lies within the southern hemisphere, 13.164 stages south of the equator, 43. It is 80 kilometers, 50 miles, northwest of Cusco, at the crest of the mountain Machu Picchu, placed approximately 2,430 meters, 7,970 feet, above implied sea level, over 1,000 meters, 3,300 feet, decrease than Cusco, which has an elevation of 3,400 meters, 11,200 feet. 43. As such, it had a milder weather than the Inca capital. It is one of the maximum critical archaeological websites in South America, one of the maximum visited traveler sites in Latin America, 44, and the maximum visited in Peru. Layout. Temple of the Sun or Torian. The website online is kind of divided into an city zone, and an agricultural zone, and into an top metropolis, and a decrease metropolis. The temples are inside the top metropolis, the warehouses inside the decrease. Approximately 200 homes are organized on huge parallel terraces, round an east-west critical square. Located inside the first quarter are the number 1 archaeological treasures, the Intihuatana, the Temple of the Sun, and the Room of the Three Windows. These have been committed to Inti, their solar god and finest deity. The royalty area, a zone for the nobility, is a collection of homes placed in rows over a slope. The House of the Amautas, sensible persons, became characterized with the aid of using its reddish walls, and the quarter of the Nustas, princesses, had trapezoid-formed rooms. The monumental mausoleum is a carved sacrifices. The guardhouse is a 3-sided building, with one in every of its lengthy facets starting onto the terrace of the ceremonial rock. The 3-sided fashion of Inca structure is called the Huayrona fashion. Intihuatana stone. Aled the Huayrona fashion. Intihuatana stone. Intihuatana is believed to have been designed as an astronomic clock, or calendar, by the Incas. The sculpture carved from the rock bottom of the Sun Temple is interpreted as water mirrors for observing the sky. The Intihuatana stone is one of many ritual stones in South America. These stones are arranged to point directly at the sun during the winter solstice. The name of the stone, perhaps coined by Bingham, derives from Quechua language. Inti means sun, and wada to tie hitch. Roads and transportation. The humans of Machu Picchu have been related to long-distance trade, as proven with the aid of using non-neighborhood artifacts discovered on the site. For example, Bingham discovered unmodified obsidian nodules at the doorway gateway. Entrance regulations. Entrance became constrained to 2,500 traffic in keeping with day, and front to Huayna Picchu, inside the citadel, became similarly confined to 400 traffic in keeping with day. Motion pics. The Paramount Pictures movie Secret of the Incas, 1955, with Charlton Heston and Ima Sumac, turned into filmed on region at Cusco and Machu Picchu. The commencing collection of the movie Aguirre, The Wrath of God, 1972, turned into shot inside the Machu Picchu vicinity, and at the stone stairway of Huayna Picchu. Machu Picchu turned into featured prominently inside the movie The Motorcycle Diaries, 2004, a biopic primarily based totally at the 1952 Younger Journey memoir of Marxist innovative Che Guevara. The Nova TV documentary Ghosts of Machu Picchu provides an problematic documentary at the mysteries of Machu Picchu.